now to an award-winning ceremony recognizing upstate law enforcement officers.
Fox Carolina's Brookley Cromer was at that ceremony today. She joins us live for how it all went down.
Crime Stoppers honored several members of law enforcement with the Russ Sorrow Award, including a Greenville County deputy and a state trooper with South Carolina Highway Patrol, making this the first time two recipients received the award in the same year. The Russ Sorrow Award is given out in honor of the Greenville police officer killed in the line of duty in 1996. Today, the Poinsett Club filled with law enforcement, members of Crime Stoppers, and family members of the 10 officers who have lost their lives in Greenville since 1996. They were presented with a rose to place by their loved ones' pictures, and the mother of fallen Easley police officer Matthew Hare was also honored. Deputy Jonathan Hill and Lance Corporal Devin Kugler both received the Russ Sorrow Award for going above and beyond the call of duty to serve their community.
The Russ Sorrow Award is an officer that exemplifies things that Russ Sorrow had, the traits that he had, the fearlessness and the love for law enforcement and the love for his co-workers. And the Shield Award is for an officer that goes well and beyond the call of duty to not only train young officers, but to continue with their duties.
The Shield Award was also presented at today's ceremony to the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division's Senior Special Agent Eldon McCraw. He's worked on several high-profile cases, including the Susan Smith case in 1994, and most recently assisted with the Alec Murdaugh investigation. And coming up at 5 and 6, we'll hear from some of those recipients. Live in the studio, Brookley Cromer, Fox Carolina News.